So this is min-max advice. We're going to talk about what is min-max, how to manually set min-max values. We're going to talk about the new cool min-max advice report and generating min-max values from the report. Then once you have the min-max values, how to actually leverage them and use them to your advantage in purchasing through a purchase request and also in this great report called Purchasing Advice. If you have any questions, if you look to the top of your screen or the bottom of your screen, you'll have a Ring Central toolbar, and part of that toolbar is a chat window. So if you have any questions, just put them in chat. This presentation will take about 20 to 30 minutes tops, and then I've reserved 10 minutes to answer any questions in the chat. I can't answer company-specific questions, so if you could keep your questions kind of, geared towards the masses attending the webinar, I'd really appreciate it. And if you're one of the companies that has multiple attendees, if you could get together as a group and submit as a group your questions rather than 5 people from the same group submitting 5 different questions, I would also really appreciate that. This is me, Gina Thomas. I'm your presenter today. You can see I'm getting ready for Christmas with that Christmas tree behind me. It's the only decent picture I could find of myself. I am an NCR certified Counterpoint trainer. I have 20 years in the retail industry. Notice it says 20 plus because I didn't want to date myself, but I have worked in retail. I actually have 15 plus years educating people in Counterpoint. And as it says on the slide, I'm just an all around great gal. Okay, so the whole purpose of having reorder points is because sometimes we order too much or we don't order enough. And that's the whole purpose of having the min-max feature to help us control ordering too much or too little. Because the key is we want to order just enough to stay stocked consistently. So min-max, in case you don't know, is just fancy for reorder points, or some people call them par values. Doesn't matter to me which term you use, it all means the same thing. So in order to set min-max values manually, and again, I'm going to jump into the software and show you how to get here. You can actually go to an item master, and on the item master, there is a min-max field, and you can use your crystal ball, you can use your best guess, and just manually set those values. The default value, by the way, is 0 and 0. Then there's this cool report called the Min-Max Advice Report, which based on your sales history will tell you what your reorder points should be. Now, the only deal with the Min-Max Advice Report is you have to have Counterpoint version 852 or higher. And I'll show you how to check for that. And then even if you have that version, you may need to manually add this report to your menu. And I'll also show you how to add the report to your menu. Once you run the report, you will get a report like you see on the right-hand side of my screen that will tell you what your min-max currently is. Sometimes it might just be 0, 0, and what Counterpoint is suggesting your min-max should be based on your rate of sales for a date range that you specify on the report. Then with a single touch of a button, you can actually auto-generate those values to your item master. Now you need to understand the math when it comes to min-max. So once you have these min-max values established and you leverage the purchasing tools to order based on min-max, what Counterpoint will do is it will look at your available. Now, in case you don't know, on your item master, there's an on-hand and an available. For most of you, available represents your live quantity right now at this very moment in time. So when you run the min-max tools, Counterpoint's looking at your current available and it's comparing it to your minimum. If your available is below your minimum, Counterpoint's going to suggest enough to get you up to the maximum. So for example, if I have a min of 5 and a max of 10, and my quantity available is 4, then Counterpoint will suggest that I order 6. Do I have to go with that suggestion? Absolutely not. You can use a little common sense here. Maybe Counterpoint suggesting 6, but you really only want to order 5. You can always overwrite that value. or maybe Counterpoint suggesting 6, but you want to order 10. You can always overwrite that value. And again, as a reminder, your default min max is 0. And here's why I mention that. I have some customers that sell into the negatives. This is just life. This is just the way it is. And so they will leverage the min max tool to pull themselves out of the negatives. So if you're in the negatives and you run the min max tool, Counterpoint will suggest you order enough to pull you back up to 0. So in purchasing, we can leverage min max at the single vendor level to have Counterpoint suggest to us what we need to order from that vendor to satisfy the min-max level. And again, remember, it's going to order up to the max if you've fallen below the min. Then there's also this really cool report called Purchasing Advice, which is a little more robust than a purchase request. When you're in a purchase request, you're only looking at one vendor at a time, and so therefore you're only ordering for one vendor at a time. In purchasing advice, you can leverage min-max for multiple vendors. And the beauty of purchasing advice is once Counterpoint suggests to you what you should order for all those vendors based on min-max, with one touch of a button, you can auto-generate your purchasing documents, which become unposted purchase request, which is pretty cool because at that point you can review, make changes, and then post. Your key takeaways today at the end of this session: at the end, you should know how to manually set min-max. You should know how to run the min-max advice report and how to leverage the Counterpoint tools. So next, I'm going to just jump into the software and get started. So I'm going to minimize this PowerPoint presentation and open up Counterpoint. So the first thing I want to show you is how to see if you have a version of Counterpoint that has that new cool min-max advice report. Because if you don't have this version of Counterpoint, you'll basically manually set your min-max levels. So to see what version of Counterpoint you have, you're going to come to the main menu. I'm on the main menu right now. You're going to come up to the very top, up to the toolbar here. Let me annotate this so you can see. So I'll just draw. So here's your toolbar right here. So you're going to right click on the toolbar. Let me just clear my drawings here. You're going to right click on the toolbar. Then you'll get this pull down. You're going to go to About Counterpoint. And what you're looking for is version 852 or higher. Now I'm running 856, which is the latest and greatest, but if you have at least 852, you'll be able to use the min-max advice report. And I'll circle back around to that in just a few minutes. Let me go ahead and clear my drawings. So first I'm going to show you how to set min-max values manually. So that starts by clicking on Inventory from the main menu, and then Items. By the way, this is the newest version of Counterpoint with the new user interface. So if you're using a slightly older version, the new version is exactly the same as the old version. It just looks different. It's a little more modern, a little prettier, a little more fun. So I am going to go to Inventory Items. Once I get into Inventory Items, I'm just going to select an item. So I'll just select this 2 wood here. And then I'm going to come down to this Inventory button in the lower left-hand corner. And I'm just going to press my Enter key. So you can see I'm looking at my location main. My default min-max down here at the bottom is 0 and 0. And I can just manually type what I think my reorder point should be. If I have more than one location, I'm going to use the right-facing arrow at the top of the screen and go to my next location, which is storage. And again, set my min-max values. Now this will work for what we call normal items, items that are not gridded. So in other words, non-apparel items. If you have, excuse me, if you have gridded items, apparel items, I'll show you how to set min-max for those. So I'm going to do a lookup. I'm going to find a gridded item. I have a polo shirt in here that's gridded. So you can see here the tracking method is gridded right here. I'm going to come down to inventory, just like I did for my normal or ungridded item. I'm going to press my enter key. So here I'm at the main. Now notice the min-max fields at the bottom are grayed out. So for gridded items, you need to go to Model Stock. And in Model Stock, you would just set the min-max for each color and size. Or if each color and size is going to share the same value, you can actually come to this button called Set Min-Max, and you can go and set, I'm going to have 4 and 7, and click OK, and it'll automatically populate all the min-max values, and then you can edit accordingly. Maybe your red larger sells a little bit better than all the rest of the colors and sizes, so you can manually edit. I'm just going to save my changes. And again, if you have more than one location, you'll use the right-facing arrow on the toolbar and go to your next location and set the min-max values for those gridded items. So that's all very manual, and there's nothing wrong with setting it that way. And again, if you don't have 852, this is pretty much your only choice. Something else that a lot of people don't realize is that you can have Counterpoint actually calculate vendor lead time, the amount of time it takes for a vendor to ship you product based on when you purchased and based on when you received. So I'm just going to call up an item here, one of my golf clubs, because I have a golf store. If you come down to this button called Vendor Items, so I'm just going to click on Vendor Items. And what I'm going to do is use my right-facing arrow because that will automatically call up my primary vendor because I might have more than one vendor. So you can see Adams right here is my primary vendor. And I'm going to click on the Purchasing tab. And on the Purchasing tab, there's an Auto Calculate button on the lead time line. So I'm going to auto calculate. Counterpoint will give me a warning. I'm just going to say yes. And you can see my average lead time for this particular item is 7 days. In other words, from the time I purchase it to the time it lands on my doorstep, an average of 7 days lapses. Unfortunately, there's no global lead time switch. You basically have to visit the items where you want to establish a min-max value to calculate the lead time. And this lead time will come in handy for the min-max advice report. But you don't have to do a lead time. You can always make up your own lead time, which would be global. All right, so I'm going to exit from here. Now let's talk about the min-max advice report. So I'm just going to say yes to that. So if you go to inventory and you click on reports, I've already added the min-max advice report to my report module right here. And I've even made it a favorite. So if you have the newer version of Counterpoint, you could click inside the star and then it becomes a favorite on your main menu. So you can see here, it's right here. Now let's say you have version 852 or higher and you go to inventory reports and you say, whoa, I don't see the min-max advice report in here. You can easily add it to your menu. First, you have to know what menu you're using. So if you look to the very upper right corner of my screen where it says Gina, that's my name, sysadmin, that's the menu that I'm attached to. So in order to add the min-max advice report to my menu, I'm going to have to go to the main menu. I'm going to come down here to Setup, System, and then something called a menu code, which is right here. So I'm going to click on menu codes. I'm going to go into the menu code lookup and find sysadmin. And then I'm going to go to the menu editor. Now in the menu editor, the custom menu represents what I can see because I belong to this group called sysadmin. The default menu represents everything that came with the software install. And a lot of people that upgrade from an older version of Counterpoint to a newer version will notice that new features don't automatically populate your custom menu. You actually have to drag them from the default menu. So if I open up my default menu, Inventory, and I come down here to Inventory Reports, and I find the min-max advice report in here, which would be nice if it was alphabetical, but it's not, so you have to look for it. Then I want to drag it over to my custom menu. So in my custom menu, you can put it wherever you want, but for me, I'm going to put it under Inventory, and I'm just going to drop it here under Reports right there. So I'm going to click on min-max advice. I'm going to take my mouse, and I'm just going to hover over that piece of paper. And then I'm going to hold down my left click and I'm going to drag that report over here to the inventory reports folder. Now notice if I try and put it somewhere where Counterpoint's unhappy about it, it'll give me this circle with a slash. It means it's not going to work. Wherever you're trying to drop it, it's not going to work. So if it looks like a nice piece of paper, it's all nice and happy, I can go there, drop it under reports, and there it is. And if I don't like the position, maybe I want it to live with the rest of the reports, you can actually hold down your left click and drag it. So now I have it in there twice, which is fine. So now I'm going to exit from here. I'm going to save my changes, and then I'm going to save again. Now, if I forgot to save a second time, because you do have to save twice, and I just click on this X, Counterpoint will give me a little safety net and say, whoa, don't you want to save your changes? Why, yes, I do. So there we go. Save my changes. Okay, so now that I have that cool report there, I can use the cool report. So again, I'm going to go to Inventory, Reports, and Min-Max Advice. Or if I made it a favorite, I can pick it up right on my main menu, which for some reason it's not on my main menu anymore. Maybe I unfriendlied it, but it is here under Recently Used. The Inventory, Reports, Min-Max Advice Report. This is a very simple screen. There's not a lot of moving parts. There's only a few decisions I need to make here. One decision is, well, where do I want to set these values? Do I want to set it for all my locations? Or am I just interested in populating min-max values for a single location? For me, I'm going to just populate my main. Under this report box, the from and to, this is the sales date I want Counterpoint to analyze. Now understand, this does not make predictions. The report is based on actual sales in the past. So my from and to have to be dates where I've actually made sales and have that history in Counterpoint. So for me, I'm going to just do month to date. So M for month, we'll put the first day of the month there for those of you that don't know date shortcuts. And then in the to field, I'm just going to type a T for today. That puts today's date. Then over on the right, suggested quantity. This is where you got to kind of use a little crystal ball. So minimum days supply. I want to have enough on hand to last me at least X amount of days. So I'm just going to say, I want at least 5 days supply. Then maximum. Well, I don't want more than 7 days supply because I won't sell through it fast enough. These can be any two values that you like. Now, if you set lead times for your items, you can actually have Counterpoint use the lead time on those item records. If you have not set lead time, you can actually define a global lead time on the lead time line. So you might say, well, on average, when I order from my vendors, it takes about 10 days for them to get the merchandise to me. You also want to use filters when you're running your min-max advice. If I leave this filter blank, Counterpoint will suggest a min-max value for everything in my inventory. You probably don't want min-max values for everything in your inventory because I'm positive a portion of your inventory may be one-offs, unique items that you get in once and you sell them and they're gone, like the diamond tiara. We don't reorder the diamond tiara because we only sell it once and then it's gone. So in my example, I'm actually going to filter for a particular vendor, but you can filter for categories, subcategories, whatever you like. You can even customize the filter to filter for other criteria. So I'm going to filter for the vendor Adams, and that's it. Now I'm ready to preview the report. So I'm just going to click on preview. And so you can see here, I have an item number, a description, the main stocking unit, my vendor, my category, my subcategory, and look at this quantity sold / day. So that doesn't mean quantity sold in that date range. That's an average daily sale of the item. So you can see on average, I sell less than a whole, meaning in that entire date range, most of that date range, I sold 1 unit. but maybe there was a day or two within that date range where I didn't sell any. And that's why you see a fraction here. Based on my rate of sales in that date range, I have 30 on hand. Therefore, based on those rate of sales, I have enough to last me 31 days. My old min-max are 0 and 0, but Counterpoint suggesting my new min-max should be 15 and 17. Now, I am going to change the date range a little bit just so you can see what happens when you're filtering on a date range where you actually did sell one each day. So I'm going to exit from the report. I'm going to come back to parameters, and I'm just going to do a minus sign in this to field and go backwards a day. Now, when I preview, you can see now that these items are saying, oh, in that date range you specified, you sold at least one every day. Oh, except for this item. Maybe you sold two in a day in that date range. And again, I have my current quantity on hand. This is your current quantity. How many days of supply you have based on that rate of sales, and what Counterpoint suggests is your min-max. Now, I may or may not agree with all these values, but there's nothing I can change on this report. So I'm going to exit from the report, and if I want to have those values right to the item master for me, I'm going to come down here to the Apply button, and I'm going to click on Apply. And then Counterpoint's going to give me a warning. I'm going to say yes, and it tells me it updated 8 inventory records. Now, I want to go look at one of my items that Counterpoint updated because, again, maybe I disagreed with some of those values. So I'm going to go back to inventory. I'm going to go back to items. I'm going to find my good old golf club. I'm going to come down here to inventory, press my enter key, and so you can see Counterpoint wrote the value of 15 and 17 for this particular item. Now, if I don't like this value, I can always change it to something else. I'm going to change it to 40 and 50 just because I feel like it, and then save. Once I have these values populated on the item master, now I can use purchasing tools to actually leverage these values. So I'm going to escape from here and from here. I'm going to start in a purchase request. I'm going to go to purchasing, purchase request, enter. I'm going to auto assign a number here. I'm going to select my vendor. I'm going to come here to lines, and then I'm going to go to the coolest feature in purchasing ever called Add Items. It's a magical window. So I'm going to click on Add Items. I'm going to save the changes so far that I've created with the purchase request. And here's my magical window. So I'm going to come over here to the right where it says Suggested Quantity Calculation Method. Now, if this is the first time you're in the magical window, it'll say None. So you'll just use this drop-down and choose Maximum. And then Set Order Quantity to, the suggested quantity. So dear Counterpoint, analyze my reorder points for these items from Adams, and if anything has fallen below the min, then suggest to me how many I should order to meet the max. And you know what else I want you to do, Counterpoint? If I already have an open purchase request for these items, do the math for me. Take it into consideration. The same with if I have any open POs. So if you were going to suggest 5, but I already have one on a purchase request, and I already have one on a PO, then do the math and only suggest 3. I am going to leave these unchecked, though. Next, I'm going to go to Select Items, this tab, or you can just click on this button at the bottom right called Next. Doesn't matter to me which one you use. So here we go. Counterpoint says, okay, well, I see for this particular club you have -5. I do not like the fact that you have -5. And your default min-max for this item is 0, but I want you to get out of the hole on that, so I suggest you order 5. Now, here's one here where you have 35, your min is 40, and your max is 50, and I want you to get up to the max, so therefore I am suggesting 15. Here's another one. Oh my goodness, I see you have -11. Well, you don't have a min-max, the default is 0, and I want to get you out of the negative, so therefore I suggest you order 11. Now at this point I can select all if I don't like what Counterpoint's suggesting, because perhaps when it comes to this VMI iron, I'm going to have a really big special on this weekend or next week, and I want to make sure I order a lot more than 11, so I can always change the quantity to order. Then when I'm done, I add lines and close. That closes out the magical window, returns me to the purchase request. And even at this point, if I need to make changes, oh, you know what? I really want to order less than 5 of this driver because I don't sell it that well. You just highlight that line, come down here to the quantity, and change the value. And also remember in the purchase request state, if you need to modify cost, you certainly can. And then when you're done, you'll post and it'll become a PO. So that's a purchase request, leveraging min-max or reorder values at the vendor level. And that's fine and it works really well. Something I like a little bit better is purchasing advice because I'm not restricted to just one vendor. I can look at multiple vendors. So in purchasing advice, again, the report, it probably defaults to replenishment, but in this example, we're going to use maximum. And again, if I want Counterpoint to take into account open purchasing documents, it will. And then I'm going to leverage filters. So I don't want Counterpoint analyzing my entire inventory. Maybe I just want to analyze certain categories or subcategories or vendors. I'm going to let Counterpoint analyze my entire inventory just so you get a pretty good feel of how cool this is. So I'm going to click on preview. So Counterpoint has been looking. I love this report. Even if you just use this report just for the informational value, it's a great report. You can see it shows you your item number. It gives you a description of the item, your vendor. It shows you average cost, last cost, vendor cost. It shows you how many are on a purchase order, how many are on a purchase request. This quantity on order means a customer order for those of you that use customer orders. Your current min, your current max, your current on hand, mine's -5, and what Counterpoint suggests, which in this example is 5. Then down here on this item, there's 15 on a PO, there's 15 on a purchase request. Counterpoint says you got 35 on hand. I want to get you up to that max, so I suggest you order 15. Okay? Now, I may or may not agree with everything on this report. I can't change anything on this report, but I'll tell you what's really cool about it is, let me see how many pages. This is 3 pages, not bad. If I had like a real live database, it might be more like 60 or 90 or 100 pages, so be careful about that. I'm going to exit this report, and if I come down here to generate, Counterpoint's going to build the purchasing documents for me in an unposted state. Now keep in mind, if I currently have unposted purchase request, Counterpoint's smart enough to see that. And so if there are any vendors in this report where I already have open purchase request, Counterpoint's going to take the items from this report and merge them onto existing purchase requests. So watch what happens when I click generate. In this window, I'm just going to click OK. Here's the warning. Oh, wait a minute, Gina. I see you already have open purchase requests for some of the vendors on this report. So you know what? I'm going to just add the items that belong to those vendors to the existing purchase request. So if you don't want Counterpoint doing that, close out of the report, go into your purchase request, and either post what you have or delete them. But in this example, I think that's pretty good. It'll help me, meet reorder values maybe. So I'm going to click on yes, and there we go. So Counterpoint is telling me, well, there were 20 lines, and I created 7 purchase requests. So I built 7 new purchase requests, and I updated one of your existing purchase requests. So I'm going to close out of here, and I don't need to see the edit list. I'm going to close out of here. Now, again, it did generate these in an unposted state, so it's up to you. We need human intervention at this point. You're going to go into the purchase request module, and you're going to review the purchasing documents. Now, there's a couple different ways to review. I can use this right-facing arrow, and I can go to lines and review them one at a time. This is a blank one that I created earlier. Let me pull up a new one. So here's one here. Oh, you know what? I really don't want 15 of this item, so I can just highlight it and I can change the value. Or, wow, this is kind of a dog. I don't want to order it at all. You can actually highlight the line, come up here to line, and delete the line that you don't want. Another way to review in a way that I like a little bit better because I think it's a little more intuitive and it's a little bit easier to manage If you come up to my favorite icon, the table view, so everyone that's worked with me knows this is my favorite icon. I'm going to click on that. You get this great split screen. The top half of the screen represents a summary of every purchase request. The bottom half is getting you item detail. So very quickly, you can review these, come down to the bottom, and make your changes. Or if you find one you don't like, you can highlight it and just delete the entire document. Or if you were just playing around and experimenting and you want to get rid of all of these, if in this table view, if you hold down your shift key, use your down arrow, you can actually bulk delete all of these just by clicking, see how we got these little dots in the margin here, and then you come to this X, goodbye, all gone. So if you want to play with purchasing advice, let Counterpoint go ahead and auto-generate your purchasing documents just so you can see the results and experiment. Be my guest. It's perfectly fine. You can come into purchase requests, go to the table view, and just bulk delete everything. So I'm going to return back to the PowerPoint presentation, and then I'll take your questions. So let's go back here, and we'll go to slideshow from current slide. And let me get out of this presenter's view so you can see everything. So again, at the end of the day, at the end of this Training Bites session, you now know how to manually set min-max values by visiting the item record. You know how to use the min-max advice report, how to add it to your menu, and how to leverage those values in your purchasing tools. So now I'll take questions. And so I'm going to open up the chat window. And either I did a really good job or nobody has any questions. I don't see any questions in the chat. Well, while you're thinking of questions, I'll come back to the chat in a minute. A little advertising for my next session. So in the next session of Training Bites, which is scheduled for September 25th, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, we're going to talk about merge and renumber. I get this question a lot when I pick up support tickets. Oh, I've got, these two items. They're really the same item, but I have two separate item records for it. How can I combine them? So we're going to talk about combining item records, combining customer records. Another question I get a lot in support is, I really hate this item number on this item record, or I really hate this customer number, and I want to change it. And everyone knows you just can't go and edit an identifier. So there is a utility called renumber where you can actually change the SKU number of an item or the customer number of a customer record, and the same thing with your vendors. Gee, I really don't like these vendor identifiers. I don't want it to be a number. I want it to be a name like Acme instead of 12345. So we'll cover how to renumber vendors as well. So that's in our next session. So look out for the advertisements, the emails, and sign up and join me on September 25th. I'd love to see you. And I'm going to go into chat. Looks like I have a question. Yay! If there's a product that you may sell more of during a certain time of the year, do you simply just change the date range on the purchase advice report? You probably mean the min-max advice report. The purchasing advice report, when it comes to maximum, it doesn't care about sales at that point because you've already filtered for your sales on the min-max advice report. So the answer is yes. You can filter for any date range you like. And here's the beauty of that min-max report. Let's say you ran it for month to date, because you want to order based on your sales this month. And after you ran it, you said, you know what? I really meant to run that for December of last year because here it is August. I am getting ready to order for December this year. So you could actually make the dates in the min-max advice for December of last year. Here's another question. How would I manage min-max for seasonal items? Good question. I would actually filter for those seasonal items. So hopefully they have something in common, maybe a description, maybe a category, maybe a subcategory, or maybe a vendor. So you would use the min-max advice and then use the filter to filter for those seasonal items. And you can do chunks of your inventory at a time. So you may run min-max advice for seasonal items, get those quantities established, and then go rerun the report for other items outside of seasonal items. So perfectly fine to do. Very good questions. Okay, any other questions? Looks like we have no more questions. So thank you for attending today. I really appreciate your time, appreciate your attendance, and hopefully I see you in September. So everyone have a great day and I'll talk to you later.